Today, I want to play a game. Earlier this week, we played buy, sell, hold with the running back position in Dynasty, and today we're going to flip the script and do it with the wide receiver position, specifically honing in on elite assets. Now, Cam, typically I don't like playing these kinds of games because I think it's silly, especially in like a keep, trade, cut. You're pinning three guys that you would just want to ideally keep. But what I like about buy, sell, hold is that it is far more applicable for your dynasty formats. You're thinking about, if you have this player, should I keep this player? Should I go trade this player? If I don't have this player, is it actually an opportunity to go buy this player? And Puka Nacua is kind of like an enigma of all those things right now. I'll maybe start with you here in the context of buy, sell, hold. Where do you stand on Puka Nacua, given everything around his situation right now?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. He's so talented that, and this might sound bad, the NFL is not going to care what he does unless he like murders someone. Like that's just like the
Hot start.
It is, but I'm just being honest with the way the NFL runs. If you're a superstar, you get away with quite a bit, and that is what Puka Nacua is. So the off the field stuff, I think it's annoying. I think that it's gonna, keep coming up, but I don't think we're gonna, I don't think it's gonna get too out of hand where it's like, okay, we lose Puka for the rest of his career. He, from a fantasy perspective, is essentially almost where Justin Jefferson was after 3 seasons. From a fantasy perspective of just he has a 1,700-yard season. Jefferson had 1,800 yards his third year. Puka had his injured season last year. Jefferson had it in year 4. So it just feels like he's kind of on that same trajectory. And the reason I use Jefferson is because we're getting to the end of his quarterback and what that kind of means, right? Because Jefferson lost Kirk. Obviously wasn't great last year. Puka, we're assuming at this point Stafford is back for this season, right? All signs point to that. But it does feel like this is the final season, right? Because this felt like it's been the final season for Stafford 3 years in a row. This one actually feels like, okay, this is the last year. So what does that mean going forward? You're attached to Sean McVay. Devonta Adams is going to be older and most likely gone. So he's going to, continue to be the alpha here. I struggle ever saying a guy's a sell this high, so I don't think I can say that with how good Puka is. Right? Selling top 3 wide receivers is usually not a great recipe for success.
Yeah,
I think he's a hold. Obviously, for me, especially the way I play Dynasty, of him, Jamar Chase, JSN, Amon-Ra St. Brown, even Jefferson and Malik Neighbors. If I ever get the opportunity to buy in on a guy like this, I'm going to 100%. I don't even care where my team's at, right? Even if I'm rebuilding, for me, I'm not saying that's the smartest way, right? If you're rebuilding, right. Don't necessarily take that as truth. But the way I play is, if I got any chance of buying on these guys, I'm going to. So I lean buy just because they're so invaluable. If you have a guy who's giving you 21 points a week, what more can you ask for it? So I think I'm leaning buy, but at the minimum, I'm a hold on Puka Nacua.
Which this is funny to me because I think you and I actually are in the same place. We're definitely in the land of we're 1,000% holding. The one question mark that you didn't bring up either was, let's say Devonta Adams does get, once the Rams move on from Devonta Adams, whether that is a trade, there's been reports that they've been shopping him, or he just flat out moves on because of age. Are the Rams going to bring in another prominent wide receiver? Are they going to draft a Mekhi Lemon in the NFL draft this year if they get the opportunity to? Are they going to make a trade for A.J. Brown post June 1? So that's a question mark as well. The other question I put down is, does any of that even actually matter given the talent of Puka Nacua, which is where you kind of land as well, right? It might not even matter given his talent. The one inkling that I have that he might be a sell is I'm just wondering what it's worth to move to a more, dare I say, maybe less of a headache, less of a roller coaster asset to Amon-Ra St. Brown. I for a year and a half difference, right?
Yeah.
For a year and a half difference. I just have that question of, is it worth tearing down from Puka and you avoid any potential headaches whatsoever in an Amon-Ra St. Brown?
It is crazy because you are essentially tearing down to Amon-Ra St. Brown, which I know some people are going to say, that's crazy. You can't say that. I mean, you look at Amon-Ra St. Brown had his second best ever career in half PPR formats, 265 fantasy points. That was 50 fantasy points less than Puka last year. Right. So Amon-Ra St. Brown is still like the 1B tier, still unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think I still want Puka, but at the same time, I
think I do too.
I do understand it from he's going to have Jared Goff and Dan Campbell for a while there. And we've seen it so consistently the last 3 seasons of he's 1,400 yards, he's 110 catches, and he's double-digit touchdowns. Like, I understand that's so hard to pass up, and I don't blame you going either way. I think I still lean Puka just because it is like this last season. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 1,400 yards, 117 catches, 11 touchdowns, and Puka averaged 4.1 half PPR fantasy points more than he did.
Which is, it's just crazy.
Well,
it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Yes, 100. I mean, that's the same difference as, let's see, like Nico Collins and Khalil Shakir.
Right.
That, to put that in perspective. So that's why I think I'm still leaning Puka, even with the volatility that could come about. Because he really is like one of the few guys in that Jamar Chase-esque tier. But man, I do understand if you're like, I want to know who the quarterback is next year. I don't want to deal with the off the field stuff. I don't think you go wrong going down to Amon-Ra St. Brown either, though.
And that's like the only player that I might actually consider doing that for, because you got Malik Neighbors coming off of the ACL. We're going to talk about the wide receiver 6 over on Keep Trade Cut right now next, but that was the only inkling I had of, man, is it worth it? But again, you put it in perspective. Puka is his upside is wide receiver 1 overall. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown might have that in his range of outcomes, but they're doing it in very, very different ways for their teams. The wide receiver 6 over on Keep Trade Cut right now is Justin Jefferson. And I'll maybe start by getting my take out there right away. He's a buy for me. I'm curious to hear where you land first before I get too into the details, but even at wide receiver 6, I'm willing to invest here. Even at nearly 27 years old, I still think wide receiver 6 is close to his median rather than his ceiling.
Yeah, he's still, even with a season where he played 10 games, even with this last year, the all-time leading receiver through their first 6 seasons. Like, you have to keep that in perspective when we're talking about Justin Jefferson. I understand the quarterback position, volatile. I understand. At the minimum, you're going to get Kyler Murray playing quarterback this season halfway through the year. To me, that doesn't worry,
Minimum's important on that.
Exactly. Like, I think, Kyler could play better. I mean, McCarthy's going to play better than what he did last year. I'm not saying he's going to be better than what Kyler was even, but he's going to be slightly better than he was last year. I just think he is, one of these guys that just is on a historic pace. And yeah, last year was disgusting, but he still had 141 targets, right? He's still being used in the offense. It just didn't connect necessarily. The 2 touchdowns obviously kills you, but yeah, I'm still in. You can look at the hat and you can go, "Oh, you're such a homer," and maybe. But like I said, he is on a historic pace to start his career, and it's not like we're on a historic pace through 2 seasons. He's played 6. I'm going to keep betting on the guy who is number 1 in NFL history in receiving yards through his first 6 seasons.
I wanted to make sure I named the minimum piece of your statement too, because I think that's actually important for me, because in my mind, the minimum is we get Kyler Murray as the starter for the majority of the season, when in reality it could only be half. But you can mock Kyler all you want based on what you actually think of him as an NFL quarterback. But instantly, right? I think you and I both agree. Kyler is walking in here as the day 1 starter. It's not actually a competition, right? I think you're the one who actually brought up the initial comparison of this is Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson. of last year, right? Where people are going to make it out to be a competition, but as soon as a report comes out saying Kyler, I mean, there already has been slight leaks and whispers of Kyler being the guy, but as soon as one comes out, like, don't overthink it. It's going to be Kyler as the starter this year. He's an instant upgrade over JJ McCarthy. Just to vomit a few metrics here, and bear with me, our off-target throw percentage, JJ McCarthy was at 21.4% last season. That was the second highest rate in the entire league. Kyler Murray was only down at 13%. That was the fourth lowest in the entire league, minimum of 100 dropbacks last season. Turnover-worthy throw rate, JJ McCarthy, 3.7. That was the 12th highest in the league. Kyler Murray was down at 2.5%, 30th. Adjusted completion percentage, JJ McCarthy, 35th in the league at 72.5. Kyler Murray, the fifth highest at 79.7%. You named the longevity question. I think it's entirely valid, but I also come back to the perspective of if Kyler plays well this year, do you really think Minnesota is going to make the Sam Darnold mistake twice in 3 years?
That's
the answer is no, right? Like, if Kevin O'Connell's going to have his way, he's going to make sure the quarterback that performed well in his system is going to be brought back, and he's not left holding the bag on, well, I guess I have to make lemonade out of a lime right now in JJ McCarthy. And that's not to say JJ McCarthy can't improve, but I mean, the ultimate question is if Kyler plays well and does play the entire season, I certainly think the Vikings are going to be ready to give him a contract at the end of next season. So I still think you have longevity here with Justin Jefferson, right? You named it. It's been elite over the first 5 seasons of his career. Last year, obviously, you get an odd duck in there, but purely circumstantial. I certainly think it's better going into this year.
Yeah, and I think you got to remember, too, like, he's been elite with every quarterback not named J.J. McCarthy. Like, Nick Mullins was the quarterback. I mean, and Max Brown.
Nick Mullins was right.
But Carson Wentz last season, the 2 games Carson Wentz played, 10 catches, 126 yards, 7 catches, 123 yards. Like, he just
get the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the fact that you can get him right now as the wide receiver 6, I think is something that, I'm all in on. Like, if I'm, I'd flip Ashton Genty for Justin Jefferson in a heartbeat. Right. I think you have the same amount of questions between the two of them. And one of them, we've seen 6 seasons where he's been an absolute dominant wide receiver. So, I get it. I mean, but even at, almost 27 years old, you're still looking at least 4 seasons where he's in his prime, more right. than likely. So you're 27, 28, 29, 30. I mean, even probably 5 seasons. So even if you're rebuilding, that's plenty of time for him to, your team to get better. I still lump him with that, top 5 wide receivers. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should knock him down a half tier. But even then, I still think he's a buy, just because the ceiling that we've seen from him is pretty impressive, and he's still attached to Kevin O'Connell at the end of the day too.
We'll move on to. It seems like the theme of today's wide receiver so far has been quarterback play.
Yeah.
And what is the future? We'll move away from that. I guess actually maybe we'll have one more player that probably has a conversation worth having. But we'll move on to Drake London, wide receiver 8 over on Keep Trade Cut right now. Again, I always have to make sure we give the disclaimer for these episodes. The only reason why we use Keep Trade Cut is because it's a crowd-sourced ranking, right? It's a general pulse of what people are feeling. It is not the end-all, be-all. It is not the true word that we must live by. It's merely a guide for framing our conversations. The thing with Drake London here, we get an entirely new regime. We get entirely new coaches. And the quarterback is Michael Penix when he's healthy, ? I'm curious to hear where you get Tua otherwise, but I think that's a nuanced conversation there. So where are you? Buy, sell, hold on Drake London.
Yeah, I'm Drake. I don't know. For me, the issue with London is I love London. I think he's still good. I think he's a hold. Just because, CD's that wide receiver 7. CD, again, I would name CD as a buy with Justin Jefferson. I think he's
100%
the bottom of that tier.
100%.
And that's probably one of the reasons we didn't talk about CD is because Lucas and I would be like, biggest buy out there, like just go move on.
Just
like,
go do it.
There's no conversation.
I talked about him in buys for contenders.
Yep.
Yes. Just go buy CD Lamb. Do what you have to do.
Speaking of buys, I do want to throw this out there. Lucas, you didn't listen to our last podcast, but Ty and I had a little conversation at the end where I sent him a big trade. he rejected it. So the people, you do not get to find out what was in that trade. But back to Drake London. I was disappointed, to say the least. But Drake London, 14 fantasy points per game last season. He looks really good when it's Michael Penix, right? I mean, he gets 1 million targets when it's Michael Penix. He scores touchdowns when it's Michael Penix. When it's Kirk Cousins, it's kind of But when Penix was out there, he does well. And I got to imagine, even if it's Tua out there, Tua can't see over the line. If you can't see over the line, who are you going to trust to catch the ball? More than likely Drake London. We've seen it, in Miami. Obviously, very different situations, different Tua, different wide receiver type. But he gave Tyreek 170 targets 3 years in a row. So he's not against hyper targeting one guy, which is exactly what I think Drake London is going to continue to do after he's shown the last 2 seasons. When he's healthy, he can handle it. So all that to say, I'm going to put him at a hold just because he's at the top of the tier, and I'm not ready to move him into the next tier wide receivers.
Yeah, which I think is a fair way of actually framing, I think, what I'll add to the conversation as well. I didn't realize, though, he talked about seeing over the line. I feel like we always hear that about Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray's listed at 5'10". Tua Tagovailoa is listed at 6'1".
Is he really?
Yeah.
I don't believe that.
I feel like, because I've heard that of Tua, right? And I'm like, I feel like that was never a conversation until people started randomly bringing it up.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's not worth the conversation. But
no, you're good.
It is fascinating, though, right? I also don't think this is a conversation this year, because a competition this year, because this has to be a Michael Penix evaluation year for this new front office. Tua's AAV on his contract, 1.2 million. It's the lowest of anyone in this year's free agent class. To me, that just screams it's an X amount of games that Tua is going to be standing in for Michael Penix until he's healthy, because it's a no-brainer paying Tua that instead of Joe Flacco at $6 million. Like Cincinnati did this offseason, right? With Drake London, though, in all of that, right? I think you named the reality of 14.2 points per game with all quarterbacks not named Kirk Cousins last season. I don't know if the ceiling is high enough right now for me to say that Drake London is a buy, because I don't know if he can get into that next tier. And I don't think, do I think Drake London could be a top 5 wide receiver? I do. But the odds of that and the discrepancy between his wide receiver 8 ranking on Keep Trade Cut to that wide receiver 5, to me, just it's not enough for me to make him a buy. But it's 1,000% a hold, because, I mean, you can feel free to disagree with me here, but in terms of overall finish, even on a points per game basis, I mean, Drake London was wide receiver 8 in points per game last season. I do think you have a top 10 wide receiver for the next 5 years.
Yeah,
3 to 4 plus years for sure. 5, I think, if you really want to, if you want to stretch it by a year, I think you could say that.
Yeah, he always gets the Mike Evans comp, but from a fantasy perspective, they could be extremely similar throughout their of his just consistency in year in, year out. Obviously, he's played 4 seasons, hasn't had 1,000 yards, so he can't be Mike Evans, or he's only had 1,000 yards once, so he can't be Mike Evans. But from a fan's perspective, moving forward, between 80 and 100 catches, between 1,200 and 1,400 yards, and around double-digit touchdowns every year, that sounds like something Drake London is just going to continually produce. So, yeah, I think he's going to be good for a while, and I don't think he's necessarily going to be a guy either that loses a step and you're all of a sudden worried about, because that's not how he plays, right? He's just a big body. I'm going to be bigger, stronger than you and go get the ball. And, that translates for a while. So, yeah, I don't know. I want to say buy, because I really like Drake London. I just can't seeing where he's at right now in rankings.
And I understand the Tommy Reese coming in as your offensive coordinator as well. It doesn't spark the utmost confidence in the world. I get it. You're running a lot of retreads out of Cleveland for this team, but I think that also epitomizes why Drake London is a hold, is because we know the talent he can be, but man, there are just way too many revolving doors in this situation for to confidently go out and stake your claim on saying Drake London can leapfrog this wide receiver 8 and make him a buy. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog, where you can get into the game this season playing pick'em. It's extremely simple. Just pick higher or lower on 2 or more of your favorite players. For example, I'll pick the highers on Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Xavier Worthy. If I played $10 and got all 3 of them right, I would win $60 just by watching football. And that's the beauty of pick'em. You can track your picks and your wins while you enjoy the game. Now, if you're not on Underdog yet, scan the QR code on your screen or use our code FELLAS when you sign up, because new customers will get $50 in bonus funds when you play your first $5 on the app. Plus, Underdog will give you a free pick to use in your first entry. Again, that's code FELLAS over on Underdog. Now let's get you back to the rest of the show. Okay, you did just bring up the name Mike Evans, and thus we must talk about Emeka Egbuka in Mike Evans' absence now in Tampa Bay. He's a fascinating one, right? Because we literally got both worlds last season. We know the floor can fall out from underneath him. Without Mike Evans last season, he was a wide receiver 44 in points per game between weeks 8 to 14. But yet, Zach Robinson is the offensive coordinator for this team now. We just talked about how Drake London averaged 14 points per game last season without Kirk Cousins, wide receiver 8 in points per game, right? So, on the one hand, there's a clear case of like, don't buy Emeka Egbuka. On the other hand, you're talking about a guy who's ranked behind Tedero McMillan right now, who could absolutely give you top 10 production for the next, He's only 23 and a half years old, at least throughout the rest of his rookie deal, which is another 4 seasons.
Yeah.
Where are you at here on Emeka Egbuka? Buy, sell, hold.
He is, I do think right now you have to make a choice. He's one of those players. I say this a lot, but I think he's one of those players you have to make a choice this offseason. Are you in or are you out on Emeka Egbuka? Because he is at the point of, like you said, wide receiver 10, where he's either going to be like the next big slot wide receiver who puts up crazy fantasy numbers year in or year out, or he's going to end up being around the wide receiver 15-ish mark for me. Like, I just think this is either the highest that his value is going to be or the lowest. And I'm not quite sure where I land on that. And that's what I keep going back and forth on. Because for me, I try to put in this perspective too. Okay, if we flipped his season, right, where we put the front half of the back and the back half of the front,
right?
I mean, you're getting like Luther Burden type hype out of Egbuka right now. Where I understand Luther Burden is lower,
scheming up ahead of Drake London, yes,
but just the fact that like Luther Burden shot up dynasty ranks the way he would, that is the same thing Egbuka would do. You look on Keep Trade Cut. I mean, he was essentially like they have their fallers and risers. His value was essentially the same as CD Lamb's after week 5, and he's fallen this far. So I'm really just trying to buy time on making this decision, and that's why I keep talking, because I can't say he's a hold, but I don't know which way I go.
I think the reality you just named is why I think he's a hold. Because I'm not looking to go out and buy. I mean, it's the little conversation we have on a week-to-week basis. Like in the regular season, do we have enough of a sample size to prove the trend will continue or the trend will end, right? And the reality is that we have even amounts of both. We have even amounts of Emeka Egbuka being absolutely freaking fantastic. We have even amounts of him being very disappointing as the wide receiver 1 for Tampa Bay. Now, I understand. Further circumstances, he and Baker Mayfield just could not connect on a pass to save their lives during that week 8 to 14 stretch. But I think this is like the median. I really do. I think you're looking at, right, obviously inflated value if you get him all the way up to wide receiver 5. But like you said, he could be sitting right around the wide receiver 15 for you otherwise. So I think this is like very fair value. I don't know if I'm willing to go out and buy Emeka Egbuka knowing that the floor can still absolutely fall out. I am not going to say he's Juju Smith-Schuster, right? But everybody immediately thinks about that when the prominent alpha wide receiver 1 for this team is gone. Antonio Brown, in that case, Juju Smith-Schuster has to step up, and he can't step up. He can't level up to meet the expectations for him. But I also think it's silly to sit here and say that Emeka Egbuka isn't a talented wide receiver that could absolutely be a top 10 asset moving forward. Only 1 year into the league. Could we see a sophomore leap out of him this next year without Mike Evans, with an aging Chris Godwin? No disrespect to Jalen McMillan, but he's not holding a candle to Emeka Egbuka in my eyes. So to me, I think this is very appropriate, but because of all the factors that we just named. Like he's a hold. And I might even lean more towards being a buy because I would rather be bullish at this point out of Emeka Egbuka than be out and try. I would rather be wrong trying to be right. Right. That's what I feel like I always frame that when I would rather be bullish than not on players. I would rather be wrong trying to be right on a player being good than try and intentionally be wrong about or intentionally be right about a player being bad. That's kind of where I stand. So if you're forcing me to not choose hold because of the circumstances, I would lean towards being a buy.
I think so as well. I think that's where I'm at. I hate saying it because I feel like, again, wide receiver 10 just is so rich. But man,
it is.
Because that's where I kind of look at it is he could go the Juju route, or it could be the JSN route, and he lost his DK Metcalf, and it's everything comes together this season. I don't think that happens this year, but like those, you see both paths, you see both outcomes kind of coming out right now. I do want to play just super fast. Little name game here because I think the names around it are interesting. We'll start with Tet. Are you going Tet or Egbuka?
See, I think I do lean Egbuka on that.
I think I do too, and I
love that. Tet's a top 10 asset.
You could ask me tomorrow, and I think I'd flip it.
Sure.
This one's the one that it really gets me though. Him or Pickens?
Yeah, and again, I think I just have longer runway with Egbuka, which is why I'm leaning that route. You're on. Look. It's no disrespect to Pickens. We got to get a long-term deal in Dallas before I feel great about him, though. So
that's true.
I love Pickens. I just need a long-term deal in Dallas, and I think I might be willing to flip that then.
All right, him or Olave? Yeah.
and see, and this is the range where it gets difficult, right? Because Chris Olave, I'm slowly becoming a believer in Tyler Shuck. I'm going to say Egbuka on this one, though, but you can come back to me after the NFL draft, and I do think we're going to have more of a conversation. I need to see what the Saints do at wide receiver.
I think I'll go Olave, and then I'm going to skip one guy because we're going to talk about him next, and then Nico Collins. This is the other one that I...
Yeah. If I'm a win now team, I think I'm going to... I don't know if I'd make the swap 1-for-1 and give up Egbuka.
I would agree.
Swap 1-for-1, but... It's the if we're talking about the next 2 years, I think Nico Collins can outperform Emeka Egbuka. If we're talking about the next 5 years, I do think it's Emeka Egbuka. So you're playing a longevity game there, really. If your window is in the next 2 seasons, I don't think Egbuka is going to kill you compared to Nico Collins. But Nico Collins is one where I almost put him on this list, but I think you and I would both agree he's just a screaming buy.
Yeah, but I think it really just shows. The issue is from London to Nico Collins is just a massive tier, right? And you can go, it's going to be preference, and you could ask us 4 weeks into the year and it's going to be jumbled, but more than likely, all of these guys are going to be within this tier, right? I don't see, like, I can see guys joining this tier. I don't maybe we'll be surprised. And, like, if I had to pick players to jump up to the next year, Egbuka, Drake London, probably at the top of that list.
Yep, I agree.
And then maybe we'll see other players join this tier, but these guys feel pretty locked into, we're not going to score you 20 fantasy points per game, but we're also going to be wide receiver ones in fantasy that you really want in your squad. So it just feels like a pretty decent sized tier.
And that's why we do tier-based ranking, right? We'll order them out for you, but we'll also tell you, hey, you could throw these players in this tier in any order. Sure, we might prefer some at the top and some at the bottom, but I'm not going to sit here and yell at you if you actually prefer any of these over the other. So Egbuka is just a fascinating one with such a small sample size. We do, however, have a longer track record for Garrett Wilson. And I'll maybe just start out by being blunt on this one, Cameron. Even at wide receiver 12, I'm out. I would much rather tier down. The state of the Jets is complex, even though he's the only receiver there right now. Geno Smith is a quarterback, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but you could have a rookie come in. There's no guarantee that rookie is a success. Do they also then take a wide receiver at 16 overall? Reports literally just came out today that the Jets are reportedly extremely high on Omar Cooper Jr. I'm not saying they take him 16th overall, but I doubt you're going to get Omar Cooper Jr. at the top of the second round with how he's been flying up boards. I just got enough question marks here where I look at wide receiver 12, even on the volume he got last year. I would much rather have a Chris Olave. Considering it's less than a year and a half apart from Nico Collins, I think I'd rather just take Nico Collins. Like Luther Burden. I'm not confident I would outright want Luther Burden, but I would, if someone were to throw that trade my direction, I'd sit and look at it for a while, and I'd question if that's a trade worth making. To me, just there's not a lot of upside here after the guys going ahead of him. So I just think the downside is substantially worse, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, he's going to be a Jet for at minimum the next 2 years, more than likely till 2029, which feels like a ways out there. Just the way his contract's working with dead cap and stuff. He was the wide receiver 5 before he got hurt last season, through the first 5 weeks. So maybe you factor that in a little bit, but yeah, it's really, really hard to get excited about him on the Jets. Again, like you said, he feels like he feels like he's the last guy in this tier. What he did in 2024, 100 catches, 1,100 yards, and 7 touchdowns is good. It kind of feels like what we're going to get again this season. And like I said, it's good. It's not great. It doesn't wow me. Where was he in points per game? He was still the wide receiver 23 in points per game. So it just feels hard to see him putting up these 1,250, 1,300 yard seasons, double digit touchdowns, 110, 120 receptions on the Jets. I mean, that's what it comes down to. So I agree. I lean sell with Garrett Wilson, and which is a bummer because I think he's a very talented wide receiver. It's just the nature of kind of where he's locked himself into for the rest of his career. At least for most of his prime, being on the New York Jets.
And look, and I get it. Last season, absolute heater to start the year, 19 fantasy points, and this is in half PPR format. So 19 fantasy points, 7 in week 2 against Buffalo, but then another 19.4, 17.2, 16.1 in those 4 games where he didn't have 7 points. We're talking about 4 touchdowns scored, 1 in each of those games. So if you're going to promise me when the Jets are in scoring position, it's always going to be Garrett Wilson who's scoring the football, sure, we can have a different conversation if he's going to maintain that pace of touchdowns. I also think that's relatively unsustainable. And again, there's a lot of question marks here. There's a lot of them. What are they going to do in the NFL draft? Are we 100% confident if this team is towards the bottom? Are we 100% confident that Dante Moore or Arch Manning, whoever it ends up being, right? Are we confident they're going to translate rapidly to the next level? Quarterback is one of the hardest positions to predict coming into the league. We're lucky if we get a 50% hit rate on these first round quarterbacks. So there's no promises to be made here. I feel better about the situation of Chris Olave. I feel better about the situation of Nico Collins, even though I am not the biggest CJ Stroud advocate out there. Mm-hmm. I still like his situation better. We're going to talk about the wide receiver 15 next. I think I would still prefer Garrett Wilson over the wide receiver 15.
Yeah.
But again, like, is Carnell taken to become a more valuable asset than Garrett Wilson in a few years, depending on his landing spot? Very well possible. Same with Mekhi Lemon, right? Jordan Tyson, if he stays healthy. I mean, all guys who I think could be of equivalent value to Garrett Wilson down the line. It's just you're balancing less certainty right now, but I would argue Garrett Wilson doesn't have the most stable certainty in the world either.
Yep. No, I agree. And like I said, I just put him at the bottom of this tier. And so for that reason, I would sell on Garrett Wilson. He for me feels like the least likely player in this tier to make that jump into that next year.
A trade that I would love to make right now is Garrett Wilson for Kenneth Walker, straight up.
Ooh.
I would love to make that trade if at all possible. You don't? Interesting.
I'm not. I called Kenneth Walker a sell last time, so
Okay, no, that's fine. I mean, running back 9 is rich. Don't hear what I'm not saying.
So I don't know. I go back. That one's close to me, though. I respect that one. I need to think about that one.
Yeah. I mean, and it's all based on context as well, right?
Yep,
Of your league, of your team, right? Depending on who you're trading Kenneth Walker for, I don't disagree with that outright, depending on the narrative you're spinning there. So let's talk about the wide receiver 15, though. I brought up their name. We might as well just jump into it. It's Rome Odunze, and I'm a little bit surprised by this because Rome Odunze still last season in half PPR formats was the wide receiver 27 in points per game in 12 games played. My problem here is that we're bullish on Colston Loveland. We're bullish on Luther Burden. The community still loves Rome Odunze. But my thing is something has got to give here. I don't know if we can have both Luther Burden and Rome Odunze inside of the top 20. I get it. It's young assets who are within their first 3 years in the league, but something's got to give. To me, I'm naming Rome Odunze as a hold because I do think a piece of the puzzle that was making everything complex last season is DJ Moore, who's now in Buffalo. So I do think it's worth sticking it out for a year to see what Ben Johnson can do with a higher dose of Rome Odunze, with a higher dose of Luther Burden, with a potentially higher dose of Colston Loveland as well. My concern is something has got to give here, and part of me wonders if it is going to end up being Rome Odunze. I don't know where you land. I'm a huge Rome advocate. I love the player. I love his fit within Ben Johnson's system. I'm just slightly worried Colston Loveland and Luther Burden are going to take some of the shine away.
And if we know anything about Ben Johnson, he wants to be a run first offense. So that you factor that into everything that's going on. I just traded with Ty actually last season, right before the end of the year, for Rome Odunze. Gave up T. Higgins to get him, and I do start to lean that Rome's a sell, just because I think he, again, going off these tiers, I think he's the top of this tier, of this next tier. I don't think I don't feel comfortable even close putting him into that tier that we were just discussing. Where Drake London and Emeka Egbuka, Garrett Wilson live. I don't think Rome goes in that tier. We haven't seen sustained, good play from him enough that I'm willing to put it up there. I mean, obviously, I guess you say the same thing about Puka. And
right.
But yeah, it's a nuanced thing. And you can make, some people go, well, you can make the same case for Odunze as you can make for Egbuka, right? You flip his season around, it looks a lot better at the end. The issue is the season for Luther Burden and Colston Loveland looks so good at the end that you can't do that because the whole team dynamic changed, right? And that's what scares me is Colston Loveland, Luther Burden are Ben Johnson draft picks. Rome Odunze is not. Rome Odunze is the old regime. Obviously, still first round wide receiver. I'm not getting rid of Rome Odunze at all costs. I think I lean sell. I'm in a rebuild. He's more than likely going to be on my team for this next season in Dynasty. But if somebody's coming to me, like you said, if I could get where I'm picking around Carnell Tate, Mekhi Lemon, I think I might take that.
It's a conversation to be had,
right? I think I might take that. So I think he's a sell just because he's at the top of the tier. But even with that, like I said, he's on my rebuild. I don't think I'm going to be, I'm actively shopping. If you play fantasy football with me, I'm actively shopping every player I have.
Yeah.
But
every player worth 75 cents is on the trade block for Cam right now.
So don't worry. I will still, he might end up moving, but I'm not going to be desperate to get him off my team because I think his value is going to tank start at the beginning of next season.
So here's the thing we do need to take into account for Rome Odunze, given this context. What you got through the first 4 weeks of last season before the Bears bye week, right? Mm-hmm. You got 5 touchdowns in the first 4 games, which was incredibly helpful for his value. And I think that backs up how Ben Johnson does want to utilize him. 13th in end zone targets last year. Of all wide receivers and tight ends, you take out Trey McBride and Brock Bowers, that boosts Rome Odunze up to the wide receiver 11 in end zone targets in only 12 games. And all of those came inside of the 20. So when the Chicago Bears are throwing the ball inside of the 20, it's probably going to go to Rome Odunze in the end zone somewhere. So if he can maintain, if he can become a 10 touchdown over a course of a full season kind of player, I think it's totally possible he lives up to wide receiver 15 here. And I think if he is going to live up to this value, it's going to have to come on the back of touchdowns. But again, I asked the question, does Colston Loveland's development get in the way of that too? Where I'm not as concerned about that from Luther Burden perspective. I'm not expecting Luther Burden to make his bread and butter scoring upwards of 8+ touchdowns per season. It's the battle between Colston Loveland and Rome Odunze that one could potentially take the shine away from the other. That's the only question mark I have. I think Rome can get to this value, but that's why he's very much a hold in my eyes. But again, for all the reasons that you said, I can also see how he becomes more of a sell in the process. Mm-hmm. We'll put a pin on it there. If you made it this far into the show, to the end of the show, basically, we appreciate you hanging around, checking us out. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell as well, so you know when all of our newest content is out. We are going to be live for the entire first round of the NFL draft. We always host a watch party every single year with you all. And we talked about this between the three of us, and we're actually getting together shortly after you watch this video as well to discuss some of our draft night plans as well. Typically in past years, we've tried to make it a big spectacle. And this year we're thinking it's about the people, right? We want to converse, hang out with you all. You kick back, grab your favorite beverage, adult or non-adult beverage, and come hang out with us for an evening watching the NFL draft. We'll be going live right at 7 p.m. when coverage starts. So again, make sure you hit that follow button, turn on that notification bell as well. You can follow our other socials too. FFL is over on Twitter. The FFL is over on Instagram. Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook and TikTok. If you want to follow our personal socials too, I'm at Lucas Wenzel on X, Cam Law FFF for Cameron. You can follow us over on our shorts channel on YouTube as well. Fantasy Football Fellas Shorts over there. Geez, I forgot about that. Clearly, I haven't hosted in a week. It's been a minute since I got in front of the mic, but we appreciate you all as always. Some fun NFL draft content coming next week for you all. We'll be talking about rookies that we love in this draft and rookies that we think are slightly overrated in this class. So we will see you all next week for that content as we gear up for the NFL draft. Deuces.